Hi friends, Principal Rabb-Patterson on this Monday, September 14th. Today, let's find out what's going on with Troy and friends in Chapter 18, Writing Chance. Chapter 8, not 18. You could tell who was into the horses and who wasn't. All you had to do was look at Alicia and see the girl was happy. She was in the barn Sunday morning singing. She wasn't embarrassed about it either. The other two new kids, the chunky dude and the girl, they definitely weren't down with it. They didn't come back on Sunday. Winston didn't let me off the hook, though. He gave me extra work to do even though the other dude, the one who started the whole loud thing, was gone. Felt like Winston cooked up a special job just for me. He said he didn't want mosquitoes to get out of control, so I had to go around the whole place filling in all the big holes with dirt so they wouldn't hold water when it rained. There were always flies and other bugs around, but Winston said we could do more to prevent things from getting worse. So there I was, pushing a wheelbarrow filled with dirt up and down the paths all around the place, looking for mosquito holding places. Winston said everybody would thank me later. Yeah, well, it felt like every time I filled in one hole, two more popped up. I was taking a break, sitting down beside the wheelbarrow, when Foster caught up to me. Man, I said, I'm never complaining about mucking out again. My t-shirt was drenched with sweat, and I swear I was panting like a dog. Foster handed me an orange soda. Don't do any more, he said. I wish you'd said that 2 hours ago. I wiped my sweaty forehead with the back of my hand. I'm almost finished now. You're never going to finish, Troy. Jerome's got some kids making new holes. I just sat there looking at my boy. Foster looked away. You know, you sort of brought this on yourself. He kicked a stone around with his rubber boot. How do you figure that? Asking all those questions yesterday, he said. I mean, I'm glad that other dude is gone, but some of this stuff is stupid. He traced the outline of a horse in the air, imitating what Winston had done with Luke the day before. That's dumb, man. I took a long swig of soda. What Winston showed us yesterday wasn't dumb. I'd been thinking about it when I fell asleep last night. You know my situation, I said. Yeah, well, your situation is everybody's making you look bad. Foster's chest was sort of caved in. I don't think that was part of your plan, he said. I heard a Mr. Softy truck in the distance. Its tiny music sounded even more out of tune than usual. I squeezed my eyes shut. I had enough for today, he said. I'm leaving early. What are you going to tell Winston? Winston? Nothing. Foster had already started walking away. I don't feel good, he said. I'll find Dre and tell him I'm sick. Everybody's making you look bad. That's what Foster said. He was right. That wasn't my plan. I finished the soda and watched Foster go off before I pushed the wheelbarrow back up to the barn. Alicia saw me coming and walked down to meet me. Where's Foster? She said. He's going to miss the polo match. I walked right past her with the wheelbarrow. What? I said over my shoulder. I didn't stop pushing the wheelbarrow because I wanted to get rid of it in the barn as quick as I could. A polo match here? She had to walk fast to keep up with me. Yeah, there's a team from Jersey here to play a pickup game with our guys. I thought about trying to find Foster so he'd come back, but he'd probably just tell me I was lame. Maybe Dre'd tell him about the game. I pushed the wheelbarrow up the little ramp in front of the barn and took it inside. I'm telling you, everything about the place was different. Man, that old barn was alive, and for the first time I could see which horses had been trained for the game. Their tails were braided so they looked like they'd just come from a beauty salon. And they had bandages on their legs, too. Winston was in the middle of a bunch of guys and animals directing everything. He was real serious about it, barking orders like a drill sergeant. And the whole polo team, Jerome, Willie, Little Keith, and Marcus, all of them, were dressed in white pants, jerseys, leather boots, and helmets. I left the wheelbarrow up against the wall and went back outside. The Jersey team's horses were over by the polo field, all done up like ours. I thought you said that was just a pickup game, I said to Alicia, a casual thing. Nothing's casual when Uncle Winston's involved. She threw up her hands. You should go over there and try to get a good spot. They're getting ready to start. What about you? I said. Aren't you going to watch? I'm going to check on Uncle Winston first. She shook her head like this was something she always did. He gets all wound up whenever they play. She looked a little worried when she disappeared into the barn. I walked back down the path to the polo field. I could see guys riding the horses around, warming up. Man, they were good. Looked like riders, and their horses did everything in sync. Our team came out with their horses led by Jerome and Magic. They were both profiling. I could tell from the way Winston was darting around that he was uptight. Pickup game or no, he wanted to win. I couldn't really figure out what was going on. Horses and riders were everywhere before it settled down just to 4 players for each team and a couple of referees on the field. The players all put goggles on, so I figured the game was about to start. The next thing I knew, the two teams were fighting for the ball, and they weren't riding slow either. They were going fast, but they could stop their horses on a dime and change direction. Looked like the players were running interference for each other, hitting the ball backward and forward, knocking into each other, stealing the ball from the other team, galloping and shouting. I heard somebody say, "Turn it!" Jerome reached out with his mallet and turned the ball around so he could take a better shot. He and Magic didn't miss a beat. How was he doing that? Then somebody called, "Tail it!" Marcus stole the ball from the other team and smacked it back toward his horse's tail. Little Keith was right there to run it down the field. They were yelling a whole bunch of other stuff that I couldn't hear and bumping into each other. Between the dust and the shouting and the flying ball and the horse's thunder, I felt my heart beating real fast like it does after I run the 50-yard dash. I couldn't just go home after the match, so I went back over to the barn. Jerome and the rest of the team were taking care of their horses. Winston was in the middle of their group talking real fast. They'd won, but from what I could hear, Winston wanted little Keith and Marcus to work on their swings. "Pretty cool, right?" said Alicia. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs that led to the second floor of the barn. "We're having a hoagies up at Dre's," she said. "Come on." I hadn't been up in Dre's apartment before. It was above the front of the barn, over Winston's office and the horse shower stall. It wasn't as long as the whole barn, but it was just as wide. He had a lot of open space up there that he had sectioned off into separate rooms. There was a kitchen with a wooden table and some chairs on one side of the bookshelf. On the other side of the shelves was his living room. He had a big rug with a red couch and a couple of red leather chairs sitting in front of a wide-screen TV. Up against the wall was a black exercise bench with weights scattered all around it. I liked these little Japanese lamps sitting on a wooden crate sprinkled around the place. And there was another bookshelf hiding where he slept in the back. I wasn't surprised to see he had lots of animal books laying around the place. The funny thing about being up there was that the horses were right below. You could hear neighing and snorting no matter where you were. "It must be spooky living up here," I said, standing at the top of the stairs. Alicia walked right over to the kitchen and plopped down at Dre's table. "Spooky?" said Dre. "What makes you think that?" He leaned a bulletin board he'd been sticking something on against the bookshelves. "Well, you're all alone," I said, looking around. "Are you deaf?" He laughed. "I'm not alone at all." "He's got 20 horses living on his ground floor," said Alicia. "Besides, he's with us all day." "Don't the horses keep you awake at night?" I asked. Dre looked up at the ceiling like he could see the skies straight through the roof. "It's the total opposite," he said. "I sleep like a baby up here." Dre was smiling the way he does. His whole face was lit up like he was in heaven. We could hear the horses moving around in their stalls downstairs. "So, Troy," said Alicia, "what did you think of the game?" She took a bag of paper cups down from the top of Dre's refrigerator and walked to the sink to fill one with water. "Fierce!" I grinned and shrugged. "That's about all I can say, man. You have to be fierce to play polo." Dre laughed. "Could you follow what was going on?" He turned the bulletin board around so you could see it. Star of the Week was spelled out in big yellow letters across the top. "Not really," I said. "It was hard to—" "What's that?" interrupted Alicia. She finished drinking her water and pointed to the board. "Oh," said Dre. "We're going to start, acknowledging what folks are doing around the stables." He bent over and straightened up the big letter S that was dropping to the side. Alicia smiled at me and shook her head no while Dre was looking down. His idea was cornball, but we didn't tell him that. "Here's what you need to know about polo," said Dre. "Matches are usually broken into 6 periods. They're called chukas, and each one is 7 minutes long. Each team has 4 players, and they wear a number on their jersey that tells you what their position is." He fixed the S and sat down at the table. "Number 1 plays mostly offense. Number 4 is predominantly defense, defending his team's goal. Number 2 is also offense but plays deeper. Number 3 is the most important player, basically the quarterback." Dre looked real excited. "Number 3 has to be totally on point with hitting long distances as well as controlling the ball close in with his stick." "That's what I had a hard time seeing," I said. "I couldn't tell what was going on when the horses were all bunched up together." Dre nodded. "That's what makes Jerome so good. He's very good with the stick." "The mallet, you mean? How long is that thing?" "Yeah." The letter S on Dre's bulletin board had fallen back down. He bent over to fix it again. "How big is a mallet?" "That depends on a lot of things, like how big the player is and his hitting style." Dre scratched his head. "I guess the most common length is around 52 inches. We heard Winston and everybody come up the steps. "I think I smell food," said Alicia. Jerome, Marcus, and little Willie were talking about different hitting angles and all that other stuff, but Winston and Keith were carrying 2 6-foot-long hoagies. "They can talk about polo forever," said Dre. "But take my advice, Troy. Grab something to eat quick, because it won't be here long. He got up to get paper plates and napkins, and next thing I knew, the table was covered with meat, cheese, tomatoes, shredded lettuce, and bread. I'm glad you're here, said Winston, nudging me. They look pretty good out there, don't you think? He caught me with a mouthful of hoagie, so I just nodded. He's speechless, said Jerome, blowing up his cheeks like his mouth was stuffed with food. Little Keith and Willie laughed, and Jerome pointed to Dre's bulletin board. But this starboard says it all. Who else would that be but me? And that was chapter 8. We'll read chapter 9 tomorrow. Have a good evening, everybody.